one. Oh, guys. First bite of the day. I love it. It's that throbbing sensation of when you get a bite. I just like it. I like it. Guys, today we're going to talk about a forgotten lure, a forgotten technique that I feel like, oh, it's a big one. Gosh, dog it. Hold on a minute. I gotta land this fish. I gotta land this fish. Looky here. Get up here, you big old fat girl. You big old fat girl. All right. Yes, 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 yes. Looky there. Long and lean. Fighting machine is what I got. She ate it too. We're going to talk about the Carolina rig today, guys, on Project E. You guys stay tuned.
Down to the river. Oh, bury me, carry me. Oh, far beneath. Oh, fire and water me, watching me clean kerosene creek.
So there was a day and a time, you know, a Carolina rig was like all you ever heard of, 15 years ago, when this thing was new. And then to me, the drop shot came along. Hold on, I gotta catch this fish. Oh, I got another one. Then the drop shot came along, and deep cranking and all these other things came along. And it's just like nobody really still throws the Carolina rig. So I kind of want to talk about this today a little bit, and just give you the basics too. For anybody out there that there's probably a lot of young kids that probably don't throw the Carolina rig a whole bunch. I think that's a Kentucky, it is. So we're just going to kind of cover the bases of Carolina rigging and just why, why it's a good lure to have on your deck when those fish get offshore. And it's not only offshore, like I'll catch a lot of fish springtime, before they go to spawn on this thing too. So we're gonna try to cover all that today. But I gotta make a cast without getting a bite first. We idled over those fish and there's quite a few of them up there. All right, first, places that I throw a Carolina rig, out off big channel swings, points, road beds, just structure, offshore structure, outside edges of grass beds, rough spots, rock. A lot of it is rock for me. And the biggest advantage that I feel like that a Carolina rig gives somebody is they can cover water really quick, but yet slow or subtle. A crankbait you can cover a lot of water, but it's not always the easiest thing to do. Let's say for a beginning angler, or you can't feel the bottom, you can't learn about the bottom. A crankbait has a lot shorter time frame that it's in the strike zone, because you've got to reel it so far to get it down to that depth, and then it starts coming back up as you get it closer to the boat. Well, when I throw a Carolina rig out there, and it sinks to the bottom at the end of my cast, I am at the bottom all the way back, so thus it's just a very, very efficient bait that I can cover a lot of water with really, really quick. And I can feel the bottom. You can just learn so much with the Carolina rig, what the bottom's made of. Is it smooth? Is it rough? Is it muddy? Brush pile like I've got right there. Come on through it. And my weight, oh, there, she made it. She made it, she made it. Let it go right back down to the bottom. Really important, like when you throw it out there, let it go to the bottom. So many new anglers, when they make a cast and maybe they make the cast off the edge, or they don't know exactly when it hits the bottom, give that bait a little bit of slack, let that line just lay down, bow down. When that thing bows all the way down, it's not any kind of tightness to it at all, that bait is on the bottom. And that's so, so important when you're gonna go throw a Carolina rig, just to keep contact with the bottom. And I always like to tell new anglers to count the rocks. I'm moving this thing like an inch or two at a time, and I can count each rock. Like I feel like there's a rock, there's a rock, there's a rock. A lot of people I see are new anglers that I have in my boat. Man, they're like just moving this thing way too fast. That's not what you want to do. it's a very slow technique, and I feel like what happens with it, you know, I'm pulling it, that worm actually comes up, or whatever bait you have on that Carolina, kind of comes up, then you stop, and it just kind of sinks back down to the bottom. You pull it, and it kind of comes up a little bit, then it sinks back down to the bottom. And I feel like it's super important not to get in too big a hurry. Always try to keep that weight on the bottom the entire way back. I feel like with a Carolina rig or any bottom bait, you have the most amount of sensitivity in your rod when that line's at a 90-degree angle. You know, over having it pointed more at the bait, you don't have near as much sensitivity as you would when it's, you know, around that 90-degree angle, you know, coming out the rod. The problem with that is, you know, if you were to get a bite right now, you're way out of position to be able to set the hook. So it'd be super critical to reel all that slack down, make sure your line's tight, and then set the hook. But as far as sensitivity and feeling everything, you want to try to keep that rod, you know, right there close to that 90-degree angle, because you will get the most amount of sensitivity out of your rod to be able to feel the bite. I got another one. Oh, man. All right. All right, so, you know, one problem I feel like a lot of people have, you know, new anglers to a Carolina rig is determining the bite. You know, you're dragging it on the bottom, and you're coming over pebbles, and it's all the time giving you resistance. A few things to help you. One is when it starts to feel different. You know, it's just like today, those bites, it's like I stopped feeling those rocks, and it just started throbbing. I felt a little more tension on it. Sometimes it may be like almost, somebody's cut your line and they're like, where'd my weight go? I can't feel anything. Well, that fish is swimming towards you. You better really reel fast for that bite. You know, a lot of times I just tell people just to hold it still. If you can hold your boat still or standing on the bank, just hold everything tight. And once, maybe it'll start pulling back or it goes limp, and always look at that line where that line enters the water. But generally speaking, to determine that bite, it's just going to feel different, and the more you do it, the more you'll get comfortable with it, the more you'll understand what that bite's going to feel like and how to differentiate. But that's a hard word to say. How to differentiate between those rocks, those pebbles, all that stuff you're dragging over, and, you know, a fish actually picking that bait up and swimming off with it. Get me another worm. One thing you got to be careful of with a Carolina rig, you noticed I had that weight painted black. You know, there's lots of sand bass, we call them here in Oklahoma, white bass. They'll hit that weight, so will bass. So, you know, if you're setting the hook a lot of times and maybe you snag one in the side, or you are not getting anything, you feel all that pecking, that could be fish hitting that weight. And maybe it would be a time to pick up a different bait, you know, like a football jig or something like that. You know, one of the biggest beauties of a Carolina rig is that, you know, I've got a heavy weight, super heavy weight in the weight, but then I've got a weightless bait in the bait itself. So you've kind of got the best of both worlds. You know, I've got a bait that I can get down to the bottom, I can fish it quickly, yet the business end of that thing, where the hook's at, is still weightless, more finesse, more subtle, you know, has a complete different action than you'd say like a big 1-ounce football jig, you know, that just is on the bottom all the time. It's a really unique way to present a bait. I've got a very subtle bait, you know, in the back where the hook is, yet that heavy weight allows me to get it deep, fish quicker, be more efficient. Oh, there's a bite. Maybe I should be letting it sit longer. I had to be a bluegill, maybe. I'm just sitting there talking and go tuck, 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 tuck. Just to be more efficient, you know, when you're out fishing really deep. There's a bite. I'm reeling and setting the hook all at the same time. That's so critical to be able to get that hook in that fish. You know, that was a long ways out there. And that just helps bring that line all the way up to the surface to where I can get a good hook in that fish. You know, that's right in the cheek of that fish. That's a hard place to get a good hook in. So critical to be able to reel the entire time that you're trying to set the hook. It's just a must. That's one of those other things. If you take something from this video, be sure you reel just as much as you set the hook. You got to do it all at the same time. I really should retie it, guys, but I'm not. Because I want to catch another one. It's not derby day. That's a bite. Huh. Yeah, he's got it, doesn't he? Oh. Yeah, there we go. One thing about a Carolina rig, you can catch all sizes of fish, all kinds, all sizes. I did something a little different right there. I got up and I fished shallow to deep. You know, that's just another really efficient way, no matter what bait you're fishing, is to get up on top of it, throw out deeper, and the very first cast we had a bite. And I changed baits. I'm gonna say 5 baits that I Carolina rig with. If I had to choose one of my most favorite would be like a little critter hog like this right here, you know, or creature bait. I love that. That's like a watermelon red or green pumpkin. That's probably my number 1. My number 2 would be like a soft jerk bait, a fluke style bait. A lizard would be a really high bait on my arsenal. A worm like what we started out with. And then, you know, you've always got to have the French fries, you know, just those little lug worms Berkeley makes, or your version, whatever you use, that French fry. I'm gonna use those baits in clean, clear, pressured situations. You know, those are really famous, like on beaver and table rock, really clear, light line situations. You know, that lizard for me is a springtime deal. The critter hog or creature bait is an all the time deal, and the worm is more of a summertime deal for me. So just to give you a little bit about each one of those baits and when I throw them, but that's probably one of my favorites right there. Let's get it back in the water. A great thing about a Carolina rig, you know, with that being such a heavy weight, you know, for a new angler or beginning angler, man, you can throw that thing into the wind very easily. You know, a lot of people struggle with that. You know, if you're trying to throw a shaky head or something else up into the wind, it's a lot harder to throw. You know, you've got a lot of weight, a 1 ounce weight that you can just really chunk that thing way up into the wind. As far as rod position when you're working a Carolina rig, you know, right now I'm dragging it uphill. It's pretty rocky right there. So I'm lifting my rod up, kind of bouncing it every now and then, trying to get it out of those rocks. I'm trying to almost lift it like this. When I'm pulling it downhill, I'm gonna pull my rod to the side the whole time. That's gonna help keep contact with the bottom, make more noise, make more disturbance. You can get away with it this way when you're pulling it downhill because you don't get snagged as much, but when you're pulling it uphill like I am right now or in a really rocky situation, you have to raise that rod up sometimes to get it up and over those rocks. There's a fish. Man, he was right at the boat. I just happened to hop it right over a rock. I love it, I love it, I love it. I love it. Hold still, buddy. Hold still. You're making my day. Yes, thank you. Hey, when you're choosing your weight for a Carolina rig, you know, try to get away with the biggest weight you possibly can. You know, I'm always going to start out with a 1 ounce weight, you know, if I'm fishing any kind of depth at all, over 10 feet of water. You know, the reason I want that heavier weight is like all those things we've talked about: casting distance, feel, getting to the bottom, being efficient. When you back off of that weight let me get it out there just in case I might catch one. When you back off, if you go to a 3/4 or why you would go to a 1 ounce, the reasons are if you're getting snagged. That's obvious. Like if it's just snagging, you can't get that bait work through there, that's when you want to back off. If you've got to make yourself slow down when fish are spawning, you know, bad fishing conditions, finesse conditions, that's when I'd back off that weight. That weight being lighter is going to make you fish it that much slower to be able to keep it on the bottom. And thus, if, you know, shallow, like I'll throw this Carolina rig a lot of times in the spring, really shallow, 2, 3, 4 feet of water. You know, you can also get away with a lighter weight in those instances. A great thing about the Carolina rig is when you get a bite, and especially for beginning anglers, you know, a lot of people, they just immediately want to set the hook. And I feel like that's the wrong thing to do, especially with Carolina rig. You got to think about it. That fish has a hold of that bait. It doesn't have a weight in it. He is not going to let go of it. So if you're unsure if you're getting a bite or when you get a bite, you know, a lot of times you're going to see me, I'm dragging out of position. I may have my rod way back here. Well, if I get a bite like that, man, just take a deep breath, get everything in position, get your feet set, do what you need to do to make sure you get a good hook set and do all that reeling that I'm talking about, because they're not gonna let go of it. You know, you don't have a weight attached to that bait like with so many other things that might make them spit it out really quick. Take your time when you feel like you're getting a bite to get everything in position and then make a really good hook set. Let's talk about casting a Carolina rig. It is a little bit different versus, you know, just a single bait. You know, you've got to have a lot of line out. And when I go to cast it, it's almost a circle and a throw, because by making that circle, everything is tight. If I just go back and then stop, you've got slack and you got things that go wrong. So when you go to make that Carolina rig cast, just keep all that tight. It's almost like a hesitation. I just make a big circle and I throw it, and then that way everything's tight as it goes out. That's a really critical thing that a lot of beginning people, when they go to throw a Carolina rig over, you know, just a bait that doesn't have that long leader, you've got to keep it all tight because you have two different weights out there. So I use a lot bigger weight than normal. I've got that one kind of painted black. I love this little Bass Pro Carolina ticker deal. It's bigger on one end than it is on the other. Why I like that, see how that sits on there. This end is a bigger hole than that end. And it just sits right over the knot, and then it kind of makes a little noise too. The rest of my setup here is, you know, I've got 17-pound main line. I've got 14-pound leader. I always like to go a little bit smaller leader. I like to go monofilament on my leader. You know, fluorocarbon's a dense line. It's designed to sink. I feel like going monofilament on my leader, it's more buoyant. It helps keep that bait up off the bottom. I just like monofilament on my leader of my Carolina rig. It's one of the few instances I use it. Length of my leader, you know, that's going to be about 26 inches, I'd say. That's generally what I like. I will use a longer leader if I'm probably clearer water, more finesse-y type stuff. I'll use a shorter leader like when the fish are really spawning in the springtime, but most of the time I'm going to use a leader about, you know, 24 to 36 inches long. You know, to the hook that I'm using today, it's really simple. It's just a 2/0 EWG Berkeley Fusion hook. I've got a Maxcent hit worm, just the blue fleck hit worm. I just love that worm. 7-inch hit worm. I bit a little bit of it off, you know, to catching these fish. But that Teflon coating on that Fusion hook I love, because a big issue with Carolina rig is so many people will set that hook and they'll reel 4 or 5 times and then the fish comes off. You have so much line out. It's so critical to have a light wire hook, Teflon coated hook, a good rod. Like I use a 7/6 medium heavy rod, a high speed reel, and gotta reel, because you gotta think about all that slack that you have in your line. You know, you're up here on the water, the bait's down here, so you got this slack going down to it. Fluorocarbon helps with that because it sinks, so you're gonna have a direct pull. But you've got to keep reeling as much as you ever set the hook. If you take one thing out of this video, when you set the hook on a Carolina rig, reel as much as you do set the hook. All right, here we go. Reel. He was at the end of my cast. I get the full fighting effect of that one because he was so far out there. Oh, come on up here, buddy. Come on. Man, just the Carolina rig is just a great way to catch fish. You're efficient, you can cover a lot of water. It's great for somebody that fishes all the time like me. It's great for somebody that's really young and new to fishing. So don't fall to sleep on a Carolina rig. All right, let him go. Man, so just give it a try the next time you're out there. You got it's kind of a year-round deal for me. You know, Carolina rig, I can throw it spring, summer, fall. You know, it is a bait that's going to be in my arsenal, and it's not just a deep water bait. It's a bait that I'll throw shallow too. You know, it's just a bait I can cover water with. It's a bait that's efficient, effective. I can learn a lot about a lake when I need to be quick, you know, but I can't throw that crankbait, or they're not biting that crankbait. There's just days that they want that Carolina rig. So hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Be sure you hit that like button. Be sure you're a subscriber, and be sure you tune in next week, guys. Good luck and good fishing.